My name is Jake Sullivan. I'm a marine biologist from the University of Miami. And 3 months ago, I survived 5 days in the deadliest place on the planet, Ilha da Queimada Grande, globally known as Snake Island, off the coast of Brazil. What happened during those 5 days haunts me every night and forever, changed my understanding of the limits of nature and human survival. It all started when I received an unexpected invitation from National Geographic to join an ultra-secret scientific expedition. Amanda Chen, the network's executive producer, personally called me in February 2024 with a proposal that sounded straight out of a horror movie. "Jake, we know your work with sea snakes in the Caribbean," she said. "We have a unique opportunity to document the world's most dangerous island, but we need American experts with experience in venomous animals." Ilha da Queimada Grande is 33 kilometers off the coast of São Paulo, Brazil. It's the only place on Earth where the golden lancehead, Bothrops insularis, one of the most venomous snakes on the planet, lives. The Brazilian government has banned any visits to the island for decades. Only researchers with special permission from the Brazilian Navy can approach it. "Jake, this will be the first American expedition authorized in 15 years, Dr. Chen explained. "We have just 5 days to document the island's biodiversity before it's declared a permanent military zone." The proposal was too tempting to refuse. As a herpetologist, I knew that the golden lancehead is a unique species. It has evolved in isolation on the island for over 11,000 years, developing venom that is sometimes 5 times more potent than its mainland relatives. There are only between 2,000 and 4,000 of them in the world, all confined to that 43-hectare island. Our team consisted of 6 people: me, Dr. Marcus Rivera, poison expert from the University of Texas; Sarah Campbell, wildlife photographer from San Francisco; Tony Martins, cinematographer from Los Angeles; and Dr. Leticia Santos from the University of São Paulo. We flew from Miami to São Paulo on March 15th. During the flight, Dr. Rivera shared statistics that made me question my decision. "Jake, the population density on the island is 1 snake per square meter in some areas. A single bite from the golden lancehead can kill a human in less than 2 hours. In São Paulo, we geared up with special protective suits developed for working with extremely venomous snakes, knee-high Kevlar boots, puncture-proof gloves, and safety goggles. Each team member carried doses of antivenom specific to Bothrops insularis, which costs over $50,000 per vial and must be administered within 30 minutes of a bite. The boat ride from the Marina de Itanhaém to the island took 3 hours. As we approached, the tension on the boat was palpable. Dr. Leticia told us that the last scientific expedition to the island in 2019 had to be evacuated in an emergency when one of the researchers was bitten by a juvenile lancehead. "You Americans need to understand," she told us. "This is not an adventure, it's a survival mission. The island wants to kill you, and the snakes are just the first danger." When we finally sighted Ilha da Queimada Grande, I understood why it's considered the deadliest place on Earth. The island rises from the ocean like a green, menacing fortress, covered in dense vegetation and surrounded by rocky cliffs. There are no beaches, just sharp rocks where the waves crash violently. We were dropped off by a Brazilian military helicopter at the only safe spot on the island, a small rocky clearing at the highest peak, where there were supposedly fewer snakes. But even then, before stepping onto the ground, Dr. Rivera detected movement in the bushes just 10 meters from our landing zone. "First snake sighted," he calmly announced. "Adult golden lancehead, approximately 2 meters, 10 meters northeast." We set up our base camp in a 5-meter diameter circle, carefully clearing every leaf, branch, or rock where a snake might hide. Even so, during the first hour, we found 3 lanceheads that had infiltrated the perimeter. The first night was terrifying. We couldn't sleep on the ground. We set up hammocks 2 meters high between the trees. But even then, we constantly heard the sinister sound of snakes slithering below us, and occasionally saw the glowing eyes of the lanceheads reflecting our flashlight. "Jake," Sarah whispered around 2 a.m., "there's a snake in the tree next to my hammock." I turned on my flashlight and saw a medium-sized golden lancehead coiled on a branch less than 3 feet from Sarah's head. It was in a striking position, its triangular head raised and its mouth partially open, showing the white fangs loaded with venom. Using the extendable hook Dr. Rivera had brought, I carefully removed the snake and relocated it to a farther tree. But that was just the beginning. That first night, we removed over 20 snakes from our vicinity. "Guys, Doctor," Chen said the next morning, her voice showing obvious concern, "if we keep finding this many snakes just in our base area, I don't know how we're going to explore the rest of the island." The second day began with a discovery that completely changed our perception of the island. In the morning, while we were exploring the northern side toward the abandoned lighthouse, Tony tripped over something he initially thought was a root. When we looked more closely, we discovered it was human bones, a partially preserved skeleton wearing a Brazilian military uniform. "This guy isn't in the official records," Dr. Leticia said, examining the corroded ID tags. "There's no record of any military deaths on the island in the last 20 years. The skeleton was surrounded by at least 6 dead lance heads, as if a battle had taken place. Marks on the bones suggested multiple snake bites. But what disturbed us the most was finding a digital camera still functioning in the uniform's pocket. When Dr. Rivera accessed the photos on the camera, we saw images that made us question everything we knew about the island. The last photos showed golden lance heads of impossible sizes, snakes that in addition measured over 3 meters in length, much larger than any scientifically documented specimens. "This is impossible, Doctor." "Yeah," Rivera murmured, zooming in on one of the images. The largest golden lancehead ever recorded was 18 meters. This snake in the photo is at least 5 meters. Sarah turned pale looking at the images. "Jake, look at the date on these photos. They were taken just 2 months ago. That means there are giant snakes on the island that no one knew existed." We decided to continue our exploration toward the lighthouse, but with extreme caution. The terrain became more difficult as we descended the steep slope. The vegetation was so dense that we sometimes had to use machetes to clear our path, and with every move, cutting through leaves or branches, several lance heads fell from above. By 2 p.m., we reached the abandoned lighthouse. It was a 15-meter tall concrete structure built in 1909 and abandoned since 1920, when the last lighthouse keeper died, officially of natural causes. But we all knew the real cause. "Let's go up," Tony suggested. "From the top we can film the whole island and get an overview of the snake population density." The internal staircase of the lighthouse was infested with lance heads. We counted over 40 snakes in just the first 5 meters of the climb. They had made nests in the steps and cracks in the walls. Climbing that staircase felt like navigating through a tunnel of death. At the top of the lighthouse, the view was both breathtaking and terrifying. We could see the entire expanse of the island, and every square meter of the surface seemed to be moving. It wasn't just the trees swaying in the wind, it was thousands of golden lance heads touching each other through the undergrowth. "My God," Sarah whispered, adjusting her telephoto camera. "Jake, look at that clearing in the center of the island." When I looked through the binoculars, I saw something that defied all scientific literature on the species. In the clearing, what seemed to be a complex social behavior was unfolding. Golden lance heads forming concentric circles, as if they were performing some kind of ritual or meeting. "Lance heads are solitary," Dr. Rivera said incredulously. "They don't form groups, they have no social behaviors. What we're seeing contradicts 200 years of herpetological research." Tony started filming furiously. "Guys, this is going to revolutionize everything we know about snakes. We're documenting a behavior never seen before." But our scientific excitement didn't last long. When we descended from the lighthouse, we discovered that our backpacks had been rummaged through. Not by animals, the straps had been cut precisely, as if something with sharp teeth had systematically opened every compartment. "Someone or something has targeted our food," Dr. Chen observed. "All the rations are gone, but our electronic equipment is untouched." It was then that we noticed the footprints around our equipment. They weren't snake tracks. They were humanoid footprints, but oddly shaped, as if someone had worn very old or deformed shoes. "Guys," Dr. Leticia said with a trembling voice, "officially, there's no one else on this island. But these footprints are recent, made while we were at the lighthouse." Paranoia started setting in among the team. We were not only threatened by thousands of venomous snakes, there was someone or something else on the island, and it was watching us. On the way back to base camp, our first real emergency occurred. Sarah was photographing a particularly large lancehead when she stepped on a hidden burrow. Her right foot sank completely into the hole, and we heard a scream of pain followed by an angry hiss. "Bite! Bite!" she screamed, trying to pull her foot out of the hole. Doctor Rivera and I rushed to help her. When we managed to pull her out, we saw that a medium-sized golden lancehead was stuck to her boot, still trying to inject more venom. The snake had pierced the Kevlar and bitten through the reinforced leather. "Sarah, stay calm," Dr. Rivera said, carefully removing the snake. "We need to administer the anti-venom immediately." We administered the first dose of Crofab anti-venom, specially adapted for Bothrops insularis venom. Sarah was conscious, but she began to show symptoms quickly: excessive sweating, tachycardia, and intense pain in her leg. "We can't leave the island for another 3 days," Dr. Chen said, checking the rescue schedule. "Sarah needs to survive until the helicopter returns." We set up an improvised stretcher and carried Sarah back to camp. During the journey, she began to deliriously speak about the island's guardians and the snakes that whisper ancient secrets. On the third night on the island, Sarah developed a high fever and began experiencing more intense hallucinations. The anti-venom had controlled the worst effects of the venom, but her condition was still critical. She kept talking about voices coming from the trees and insisted that the lanceheads were trying to communicate with us. "Jake," she whispered during a moment of clarity, "they're not just hunting, they're testing us, seeing if we're worthy of something." Dr. Rivera was consistently monitoring her vitals. "The toxin is affecting her central nervous system," he explained to me privately. "But some of the things she's saying, they're too specific to be just delirium." What worried me most were the sounds we started hearing at night. It wasn't just the usual movements of the snakes. There was something that sounded like whispers, as if dozens of voices were simultaneously whispering in the forest around us. "Guys," Tony said on the morning of the third day, "I reviewed all the recordings I made. There are patterns in the sounds the snakes make. It's almost like a language." He showed us the sound waves on his equipment. There were regular frequencies, repetitive patterns that didn't match the known behavior of lanceheads. It was as if they were actually communicating in an organized way. We decided to explore the central clearing of the island, where we had seen the strange social behavior of the snakes. It was a dangerous 2-hour hike through denser vegetation, but we needed to understand what was happening. The path was a nightmare. With every step, we carefully checked where we stepped. The lanceheads didn't flee like normal snakes. They watched us, keeping their distance, but clearly following our every move. It felt like we were being escorted. "Jake, are you seeing this?" Dr. Chen whispered. "The snakes are forming a corridor. They're guiding us." It was true. The lanceheads were positioned along our route, creating a kind of safe path through the forest. They were still dangerous if we got too close, but it was as if they had been informed about where we were going and were helping us pass through. When we reached the central clearing, what we saw defied everything we knew about snake behavior. There were hundreds of golden lanceheads organized in perfect circles, and in the center of the formation was the largest snake any of us had ever seen. The matriarch lancehead was at least 4 meters long and as thick as my torso. Her scales were iridescent gold, unlike any pattern described in scientific literature. She was in an upright position, with almost a third of her body raised off the ground, watching our arrival. "This is not a normal golden lancehead," Dr. Rivera whispered. "It's a completely different species, or an extreme mutation that's never been documented." The other snakes began emitting hissing sounds in unison, not hisses, but something that sounded almost like singing. The matriarch responded with a deep, resonant sound that made the ground vibrate beneath our feet. Tony started filming frantically. "Guys, we're documenting something that's going to change herpetology forever. This is complex ritualistic behavior." But then something happened that none of us expected. The matriarch began moving toward us, not aggressively, but with slow, deliberate movements. The other lance heads cleared a path, creating a direct corridor between her and us. "Don't move," Dr. Rivera warned. "We don't know what she wants, but any sudden movement could trigger a mass attack." The matriarch stopped about 3 meters away and lowered her head even further, coming almost to eye level with us. Her eyes were different from a normal lancehead's. They were golden like her scales, with an intelligence that almost seemed human. For nearly 10 minutes, she studied us in silence. It was as if she was memorizing each of us, studying our movements, our breathing, our fears. Then she did something completely unexpected. The giant snake lowered her head in a motion I can only describe as a bow, a gesture of recognition, as if she were giving us permission to be there. "Jake," Dr. Leticia whispered, "in Brazilian indigenous mythology there are legends about the boyuna, an ancestral snake that protects the forest. But I always thought they were just stories." The other lanceheads slowly began to disperse, keeping a respectful distance from us, but clearly no longer seeing us as intruders. It was as if the matriarch had given her approval for our presence. Then we discovered the true reason why we were accepted. In the center of the clearing where the matriarch had been, there was a partially buried structure. It looked like ancient ruins, covered by centuries of vegetation and earth. "These are indigenous ruins," Dr. Leticia said, examining the symbols carved into the exposed stone. "Very old, perhaps from a civilization that coexisted with these snakes." The symbols on the stones depicted human figures in harmony with giant snakes. There were representations of rituals, offerings, and what seemed to be an ancient pact between humans and the island's snakes. The ruins in the clearing revealed secrets that completely changed our understanding of Ilha da Queimada Grande. We spent hours carefully excavating around the stone structures, while the golden lanceheads maintained a silent but respectful watch around us. Dr. Rivera discovered a partially preserved underground chamber. When we managed to open the sealed entrance, we found artifacts suggesting that an indigenous civilization had lived on the island at least 800 years ago, long before the arrival of Europeans in Brazil. "Jake, look at this," Dr. Leticia said, examining hieroglyphs carved into the chamber walls. "These symbols tell the story of a people who considered the golden lanceheads sacred. They didn't just coexist with the snakes, they worshipped them as the guardians of the island." The artifacts included ceramic vessels decorated with images of snakes, golden statuettes representing the matriarch snake we had encountered, and most impressively, human mummies preserved in ritualistic positions with dead lanceheads coiled around their bodies. "This explains the snake's behavior," said Dr. Rivera, analyzing a particularly well-preserved mummy. "They were conditioned over generations to view humans as part of their ecosystem, not as invaders." Tony discovered cave paintings depicting elaborate rituals where humans and snakes participated in joint ceremonies. The images suggested that the island's original inhabitants developed some form of communication with the golden lanceheads, possibly even domesticating some of the larger snakes. But our most shocking discovery came when we found more recent human skeletons, not ancient mummies, but remains of people who had been on the island very recently. Modern clothing, camping equipment, and a Brazilian ID card dated only 6 months ago. Luis Fernando Santos, biologist from USP, Dr. Leticia read from the ID. He went on an expedition that was successfully evacuated last October. The official report said that all members returned safe and sound. We found more disturbing evidence: modern scientific equipment hidden within the ruins, research records indicating secret experiments with golden lancehead venom, and most chilling, vials containing concentrated venom that had been secretly collected and sent to laboratories abroad. "Guys, this isn't just a scientific expedition," Dr. Chen said, examining the documents. "Someone is using this island as an illegal venom farm, and anyone who finds this out disappears." Sarah, who had recovered enough to join us, found a partially burned diary belonging to Luis Fernando. The last entries reported that the illegal venom removal scheme had been discovered and properly reported to the Brazilian authorities. Day 15. They know that I know. The snakes are protecting me, but I don't know how much longer I can hide here, Sarah read aloud. Day 18. I heard helicopters 3 times today. They're not rescue. They're coming back to find me. The last entry in the diary was terrifying. Day 20. The Lanceheads brought me to the ruins. It's like they're showing me that I need to hide. If anyone finds this diary, know that the island is sacred. The snakes are not monsters. They are guardians. And now I understand why they accepted me. During our 4th night on the island, everything became clear. We heard helicopters approaching, not our planned rescue, which wouldn't arrive until the following day. It was 3 unidentified military helicopters with powerful spotlights sweeping across the island's surface. "They're looking for us," Tony whispered, turning off all our electronic equipment. "Someone doesn't want us to leave here alive with what we've discovered." The Golden Lanceheads immediately reacted to the presence of the helicopters. Hundreds of snakes emerged from the vegetation and began forming defensive patterns around our hiding spot in the ruins. It was as if they knew we were in danger and were protecting us. The matriarch snake appeared again, positioning herself between us and the direction of the helicopters. She directed her massive body and began emitting sounds that echoed across the island. Not hisses, but deep resonating calls that were answered by thousands of other Lanceheads. "They're communicating," Dr. Rivera whispered, amazed. "The matriarch is coordinating a defensive response from the entire population of the island." For the next 2 hours, we witnessed something extraordinary. The Golden Lanceheads organized themselves into a complex defensive network, covering every square meter of the island where the helicopters might attempt to land. Whenever the spotlights illuminated an area, hundreds of snakes became visible, making any landing impossible. The helicopters tried several times to approach, but the density of the snakes was so great that the pilots couldn't find a safe landing spot. After 3 hours of failed attempts, the helicopters finally gave up and departed. The next morning, our official rescue helicopter arrived on time. But before we left, the matriarch snake paid us one last visit. She moved slowly, and this time she brought something in her mouth, a small vial containing pure venom, as if it were a parting gift. "She wants us to take this," Sarah said, still weakened but lucid. "It's like she knows we need evidence to tell our story." Today, 6 months after returning to the United States, we still struggle to process everything we experienced. Our official report to National Geographic was censored. We removed all references to the illegal venom removal scheme and the archaeological ruins. But I kept secret samples of the venom that the matriarch gave us. Independent analysis confirmed that it is 5 times more potent than any previously researched Golden Lancehead venom. It's a substance worth millions on the international pharmaceutical market. Sarah never fully recovered from the neurological effects of the bite, but she developed a special connection with snakes. She swears she can still hear the Lanceheads from the island calling to her in her dreams. Dr. Rivera completely changed his research area after the expedition. He now studies advanced animal communication, trying to decipher the sound patterns we recorded on the island. As for me, I know I'll return to Isla de Queimada Grande someday, not as a scientist, but as a protector. Those snakes saved our lives, and now we understand that they are far more than predators. They are guardians of ancient secrets that the modern world is not ready to know. The island remains officially closed to the public, but I know clandestine expeditions still happen. Greedy men who see only dollars in the most potent venom in the world, without understanding that they are desecrating a sacred sanctuary protected by the deadliest creatures on Earth. I survived the most lethal place on the planet, and I discovered that sometimes the most terrifying monsters are also the most legitimate guardians.